Hello again, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Noble Father podcast. I am your host, Theophilus Zhuang. Today is May the 6th of 2024, and I just want to say how much I appreciate you tuning into the podcast. This has been a journey through life, through fatherhood, through business, through faith, through adversity, and for you to now be here listening to this, greatly appreciate that. As you can tell, I'm growing out my facial hairs again. Thank you, Phil, for rubbing it in my face that I haven't been growing it out for the playoffs. And so now that my team is into the second round, excited for what's to come. We are seen as the underdogs, which blows my mind. But, I'm excited. I'm excited for the journey. Man, this week has been crazy, insane. Not insane. Insane maybe is the wrong word. The stresses of life just come, and it's crazy. If you don't have a good grasp of your mental space and your emotional control and a good footing in your spiritual walk, in your faith with God, it's so easy to be shaken. And I found myself last week shaken. Thursday kind of came to head on Thursday, and I just felt overwhelmed with things. I had people that I was depending on that I couldn't reach out to. I still haven't reached out to, actually. I had circumstances in my social circle of friends, things happening in their lives that weighed very heavily on me as well. I have the burden of my father's as well, on my shoulders, and it just all came to a head for me. So that morning, I just was just very overwhelmed. I had a good conversation with brother Wes, and man, he was encouraging me. And it's crazy how, the Noble Father work, and I don't boast about myself and, what I've done and what have you. But the work has served fathers, and those guys that come out, those fathers that have come out, man, some of the results and some of the things that God has done and moved in their lives through the Noble Father work, through work that I've done, it's encouraging, it's inspiring, and it's something that, obviously only God could do these wonders and these miracles, and, he fully gets all the glory. But, I need to take away that ownership of, like, I did something to bring that about as well. And so though the things in my world are not going well, Wes's encouragement to me was that, hey, celebrate yourself that you've done these things, and that you should be encouraged that you are doing these things. So I took that, and I was like, I need to spend some time with God, and that was one of Wes's encouragements for me as well, of like, hey, you need to go find a space to be quiet and sit with God and sit with yourself. And for me, there's no better way to do that than to go do a cold plunge. And so if you can see if you're watching the video behind me, in my background is that there's a bunch of mountains up where I'm pointing here. Oh, geez, it's really hard to point. So there's mountains behind these clouds, and those are fresh glacial runoff. One second. Fresh glacial runoff lakes, rivers, and I, went up there, took a drive up there, and there was a washout, to lead to, on the road leading to where the parking lot was. For whatever reason, there was a detour, so I had to, find my way to where they designated us to park. And there was like a bit of a hike, like a 10-minute hike all the way down to the spot that I, would go dip at. And it was amazing, as I got there, steadied my mind, right? Cold plunging is something that is a mental practice for me. It's a spiritual practice. It's an emotional practice. It's everything. It really forces you outside of that comfort zone and forces you to go back to your breath and to your thoughts and to your, and to just, feel alive, I guess, again. And so once I got there, got into the water, did 10 minutes, and getting back out, and it was just a beautiful day. It was just a surreal day. And I brought my Bible out there with me, and I've been reading through the story of Exodus, right? Of Moses and the Israelites and the Egyptians, and man, it just so happened that day, right? It was in Exodus 14:14, and Exodus 14:14 is essentially God, like the Lord is fighting for you, and I'm going to read it for you. And it's an encouragement that I want to give over you as well, the listener. This is a promise that is given to all, not just those who have a relationship with him. And you might not believe in the God that I believe, but I believe that God loves you beyond even more than you could possibly imagine. And just because you don't know that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. It says the Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. And so, in the struggles that I was going through, in the people that I was chasing, in the invoices that aren't paid, in the the people who are declining membership in the Noble Father group, the smallest little things, the struggles that I was going through, the battles that I was fighting, I lost the reality, lost the revelation that God is fighting on my behalf. And in that moment, sitting there on that rock, reading this promise that the Lord is fighting for me, and I just have to be quiet. Of course, duh, right? And so that set me off, right? Like that was an amazing encouragement, and I had no solutions, and I still don't have solutions to those problems. But now I'm in this place of like, God, you're fighting for me. You're fighting on my behalf. Like, why am I even struggling and going back and forth about this? You're doing it. You're doing something, like, and things are happening. And so really give it up. And then yesterday, at church, and the church and pastors preaching a sermon, I got into my head of what I want to talk about today in this podcast. At one point in the sermon, I don't know, it wasn't even relevant to what pastor was preaching. I just heard the word good in my head. And, when I hear the word good, I think of like Jocko, right? Right. And he talks about, oh, you just got a divorce. Good. Go do something about yourself, right? Oh, you just lost your job. Good. That means new opportunities are coming. And that's a mindset that we don't take to a lot of our things. Is we are always so quick to jump to the most fatal and the most heartbreaking or the worst case scenarios of any given situation. And we never take that thought captive and think, what is something good that can come about from this? So, take the example of getting divorced, right? Wife, wants to divorce you. Well, good. What is a positive angle that you can take to that scenario? Well, that means that she has seen something in me that is not congruent with her. How can I take that extreme ownership? How is this my fault and my responsibility is something that you always hear on this podcast of me saying. How is this my fault and my responsibility? How is this divorce my fault and my responsibility? If you go into the world, you'll see people who love to blame others, who love to blame the world around them, who love to and struggle when the world doesn't bend to their will. And yet they go on to the next thing and they suffer the same thing. They get divorced once and they were, it was suggested to them that, hey, potentially this is a you problem. Maybe this is your narcissistic tendencies. Denial. Go into another relationship, find themselves in the same position, and end up in the same difficulty, right? We are psychological beings. I literally just said that to a brother here of like, we are psychological beings. Things that we don't do, we will inevitably fall back into, right? Wounds that we don't heal will eventually fester and open up again. And you'll have another shot at healing that, right? Or it gets so bad to the point where it festers, it gets infected, and you have to cut the arm, you have to cut the leg, or whatever it is that's hurting. You got to cut it, you got to remove it. That is life, and God intended that. God created the world to be that way for a reason. And yet we've gone far away from it. And now we're seeing all the results of this world that we're presently in. And so good, right? You have to work on yourself now. You're getting a divorce. You got to figure out what it means to live by yourself again. What a wonderful opportunity to figure out what you want in life. Oh, you just lost your job. Good. This is an amazing opportunity to go spice up your resume and go find new things. Or maybe it was a job you didn't like to do. Maybe it was a position you didn't want, you didn't like, you didn't enjoy the work. It wasn't fulfilling for you. It drained you. Good. Great opportunity to go and learn about yourself. Go into some personal development. Hire a coach. Heal some of the traumas that you're going through. Find out what it is you want to do. Oh, that job also meant that you weren't present with your kids and that you were largely absent. What a great opportunity. Now you have time to go spend time with your family. Now you have the opportunity to work on your relationship with your wife. Oh, now you have the opportunity to springboard into working for yourself, running a business. Oh, there's an opportunity available. Jump into that. There's so many ways to look at things positively. We shouldn't just be so quick to jump into the negatives. I'm the perfect person to say that. I was the person that would play the worst case scenarios in everything that I did. I am very good at poking holes in ideas. I was very good at looking at something and thinking, why can't we do this? Why can't you do this? And looking at the negatives, what are the repercussions of it? And it wasn't until I tore down those negative superhighways that in my mind, that I would take all the time, that the positive made sense to me. And it's not like the positives weren't there. It's not like they weren't present. They were there. I just didn't clue myself into them. I just didn't acknowledge their existence. And because I treaded on the superhighways, and there's a reason I call them superhighways, is because it's expedited. It's super easy to take those routes. In talking about those negative superhighways, it reminds me of where I'm at in the Exodus story, right? The Israelites are now wandering the desert. God has guided them by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire during the night to guide their way through the desert. They have seen God do his 12 plagues, the wonders that he did to get Pharaoh to let them leave Egypt. They've seen him spread to split the Red Sea for them to walk on dry land across to the other side, and then to see that water absolutely decimate Pharaoh's army. They've seen God do all these things. God is feeding them in the desert with bread, manna from heaven, sweet honey bread from heaven, and providing the meat to eat. All of their sustenance God has provided for them. And yet, in their toils and struggles, they would consider that going back to Egypt is better than starving in the desert or dying of thirst in the desert, when God was already providing for their needs. These negative superhighways, the Stockholm syndrome of going back to our captors because it was such a familiar feeling, is something that we as human beings are so inclined to do and be. So many people, Christians, would say that, I wouldn't be like the Israelites. I wouldn't grumble. Bro, you have no idea. You have no idea what you're capable of. So many people like to think that, I wouldn't betray Jesus 3 times like Peter. I wouldn't betray Jesus for a bag of silver coins. So many people, sinful people, like to believe that they are better than these people. Bro, you have no idea what you're capable of. You sell Jesus for less. You sell God for less. And that negative superhighway is one in which we need to get rid of. We need to tear those things down, because when you start to take that, man, you go to the wildest places, you go to the darkest of places, and in your attempt to control the circumstances in your life, it leaves no room for God. And it's and that's a and then we go to pray for blessings. We go to pray for abundance from God. And that conversing with God in a false with our false ideologies and the false beliefs we have about ourselves, that's not even a faith of a mustard seed. When we identify that way and when we look at our worries and magnify them, that is not a faith of a mustard seed. That is less. And so when we learn to take those things captive, when we take our mind back and look at the world from God's perspective and understand how grateful that we are to have the blessings and the abundance that we've already been given. The fact that you woke up this morning is already a big deal. God gave you another chance to do this life. God gave you another chance to choose Him today in everything that you do. You should be grateful. You should see that as a blessing. You should think about that often. And this isn't something that came to me, right away. Gosh, I'm 38 years of age, and I would say I didn't start getting it probably until I was 34, maybe even 33 years of age. It's something that I had to, uncover and walk through. And so, as you're listening to this, I don't know who you are. Maybe you're a 13-year-old who, cheers on the Philadelphia Eagles and, you're struggling through high school and navigating all that stuff. Maybe you're a dad with a kid, 2 kids, facing a divorce. Maybe you're a dad with kids and you just started a business. Maybe you're in ministry. I don't know who you are. But no matter what, take those thoughts captive. Don't let the worries drag you into a rabbit hole and suddenly you're grasping at life, trying to control your circumstances. God ultimately has the best for you. And that is literally the story of Exodus. Is they wandered around the desert for 40 years and they didn't get it. They just didn't get it. Those who were promised to see the land didn't get to see the land. Moses didn't even get to see the land. So you can see our disobedience and our willful blindness and our willful rejection of taking those thoughts captive and trusting in that God is doing something and God is moving in our lives. Not seeing that and not seeing the beauty of it will cause us not to celebrate and be grateful for it. And so I want you to look at your life. Look at all that He has blessed you with. Look at all that He has given you, the people that He has put in your life, everything that you are a part of, everything that you are, the breath that you draw, the very breath that you breathe is a blessing. And so, I think that would shift a lot. That shifted a lot for me, from a fatalistic person, to you, that understanding that my interpretation is for me alone to take away. I get to choose how I look at a circumstance. And if I'm going to choose to look at it through the negative light, guess what your results are going to look like? It's just a self-fulfilling bias. It's going to fulfill itself. And if you're going to choose to look at the positive, you get to see the beauty. You get to be grateful for the outcomes that are coming. And you'll hear me often say, right? The reward of a journey is not the destination. The reward of the journey is the journey itself. Appreciating that this life is a difficult one. God intended for it to be difficult. I'm actually glad God made it difficult because then I have to rely on Him. And so in your struggles, if you are finding difficulty in your struggles, I highly encourage you to ask God. God will not leave you down. God will not let you down. And God will not leave you hanging. And He will show you if you merely open your eyes to it. If you don't open your eyes to it and you only see the negatives, what is the point of God blessing you? If all you're going to see is that God did not do this, that, or the other for you, or do it to your liking, there's no point God would give you any blessings or lead you to any kind of abundance. And And what you'll hear my pastor say all the time is, like, sometimes he'll show you what you don't want to show you what you want. And I think that's the other way around. I have it here in my notebook. Sometimes I'm going to take my time to find it. God will often show us what we want by showing us what we don't want. God will often show us what we want by showing us what we don't want. And so, in your situations, as dire as they may be, good. There's a reason. God's will is being fulfilled, whether you like it or not. God's will is going to be fulfilled. And so I just want to encourage you with that this week, because that's what's encouraged me. Yeah, invoices aren't paid. God's still providing. There's people I want to reach that aren't reciprocating. Good. Time to trust in the Lord. Right? We need to go back to China. Right? My wife to visit my family members back home. Finances aren't in the right place. We're trying to figure a lot of these things out. Good. Time to see what God can do. He's fighting for you. What do you have to be concerned about? Business isn't thriving. Good. Good. And we got to rely on God more. Maybe you're not working hard enough. Start to ask these things about yourself, right? How is this your fault and your responsibility? What can you directly control, right? And just trust in God that He's fulfilling something. And you'll see inevitably God's doing something. And so I just wanted to encourage you guys with that. Thank you for joining me again. I'm going to keep this one short today. Canucks are still in the playoffs. They're still in the hunt. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And thank you for joining me again. Don't forget, if you're able to, please share this episode with people who you think would be encouraged by its message. And also, if you're a father who's listening to this for the first time, know that we meet over on Discord. We are a premium community, which is a paid community. And for $25 USD a month, you can take part in our community, take part in the meetups that we're doing. We have our Thursday meetups where fathers come to drop the mask. We have a Wednesday meetup now for Life Group, which is for those dads who are faith-based, who want to talk about their spiritual walk. We gather together to just talk about life with the context of faith. And we also do the last Tuesday of every month, we do a mastermind, which is to check in on our goals through the year. You know, if we don't track what we said we're going to do, we won't do them. And so this is how we grow as fathers. This is how we take back the world, one father at a time. So always remember that we are not promised tomorrow. So stay present and be noble. Thank you. Bye for now.